So I'm doing this video to assist students who are writing the ICA Exams Advanced Taxation based on the new syllabus. My name is Timore, and this video is powered by African Center for Tax Policy Research. It's a non-governmental organization. We currently inviting people who want to develop their research skills in tax policy and be part of the tax policy advocates. We organize training to support our activities. So you are welcome. You can reach me on WhatsApp only. The WhatsApp number is there. So this video has been recorded to assist students who are preparing for the advanced taxation paper and in the new part 3. The content is based on the syllabus, but then some key concepts in taxation in Ghana we will discuss them. Feel free to give me your feedback so that we can enhance the content of this video. For me, taxation is a paper which is a bit complex because it's a combination of accounting, tax, law, and so many other fields. For example, if you want to tax or you want to calculate the tax of an industry like the oil and gas, you need some bit of knowledge, some basic understanding of that industry so that you can do the taxation of those entities properly. That is not even too much of a problem. The issue is that the tax laws keep changing almost every year. When the Minister of Finance presents his budget to Parliament, new tax policies are introduced, and sometimes the current ones are refined, and he uses laws to refine it. So you see new regulations coming up. For example, the 2018 mid-year budget introduced the National Health Insurance Levy and then the Get Fund levies to a straight levy. All of these things are changes that occur frequently. So it is important that if you're a student of taxation, you have to keep yourself abreast with the various changes, else you'll be quoting wrong law, and what you have studied before will become archaic and not applicable anymore. So the purpose of this lecture or video is to impart some little understanding of what the syllabus requires you to do in the new ICA Part 3 exams. So why is tax so interesting to study? Why is it an interesting subject to study? For me, it is very dynamic. Like I've said, it keeps changing, and not only that, you see so much politics in taxes, law, economics, commerce, and accountancy just intersecting at that point. You can never have any tax law or taxation without politics. Excuse me. Without politics in it. So it makes it so interesting. Today, one government will say they want to impose taxes on condoms. The next day, the next government will say, no, why do you impose taxes on petty things like condoms? So it's full of political intersections and so many things. So that is why tax is very interesting to study. It is also complex because most of the times the way the tax laws are written, you read it for the first time, you can't easily understand it. And apart from that, taxes affect almost every aspect of our life. When tax is introduced on petroleum products, it affects everybody. So unlike other aspects of human life, which or other fields which does not affect directly our lives, taxes affect everything that we do. And so it is very, very interesting. And as much as we say that it's a bit complex, it is interesting to study taxation. So why don't you become a tax expert? So I'm using this opportunity to invite you to join the Chartered Institute of Taxation. This is what Louis, one writer, it's a book called Partners. He said everything today is taxes. What better seat on the grandstand of life can I offer you than that of tax counsel? Who is the figure behind every great man? The individual who knows his ultimate secrets. A father confessor. Hell no, the tax expert. So businesses who want to invest, after getting the money, the next thing they want to think about is what is the tax implication. So it appears that tax is quite a major thing that affects everybody. And I believe that even from biblical time, Jesus Christ was approached on taxes. So the CIT exams, I say that after you qualify as an accountant, you'll be exempted from 6 papers, and then you write only 6 papers. I know most people say that 6 papers is quite a lot, but hey, this is a specialized area. Tax is a technical area, so 6 papers is okay. And then after the ICA, you will be writing 6 final one. Final one comprises 3 papers. We have oil and gas taxation. This one is dedicated to only taxation of oil, gas, and mineral resources, the taxation of resources. And then we have tax audits, and then international taxation. This is a very interesting paper to study, looking at the way globalization is and technology is changing the world in which we live, and the way businesses are conducted nowadays. So after final one, you must pass all final one before you move to final two. Final two comprises advanced taxation, and then tax practice and administration, and then strategic tax planning. This is where a lot of advice will be based on. You will notice that the syllable is more how do I say it, more structured to reflect what is studied in the CIT exams. So it will be important to look at, or along our studies we will be looking at some past questions from these papers that is written in the CIT exams. Now, before we continue in our study, or before we start any discussion, let us look at the content of the syllabus, and you can find it in page 49 of the new syllabus. You will notice that paper 3.3 builds on the knowledge of principles of taxation in paper 2.6. So please, if you have not done tax before, you have to go back to 2.6, study taxation principles before you come here, because this paper builds on the it's assumed that you've gained some prior knowledge in taxation, but never mind if you've not done it before. As long as you can catch up, it is fine. So we'll just develop your competences at this level to ensure that there is tax compliance, and most importantly, how do you identify opportunities for tax planning? So at this level, it is more of tax advisor or a tax expert. So the syllabus will cover both domestic law and international dimensions. So we're discussing some international taxation, and mostly we expect that you should be able to resolve complex scenarios. Okay, so we expect also that you demonstrate some skill or knowledge in communication and conveying appropriate advice. How do you communicate and advise clients? Good. So on completion, we expect 3 major study objectives. Yeah, 3. I think so. 3. So you should be able to compute and advise or calculate and advise on opportunities. That is more ethical. See, sometimes when we talk about opportunities, we don't want the illegal tax advice. No, it's not what we want. We want more ethical manner. So you should be able to advise on opportunities and tax implications. The second objective is that you should be able to compute and advise on corporate tax liabilities, including complex situations. And again, in the old syllabus, specialized industries were not too much examined. This time it is going to be fully examined. So mining and minerals operations, petroleum operations, trust, financial services, and exempt organizations. A lot of work needs to be done here. And then the last one is that you should be able to advise your clients, communication with clients. And then we expect that you should be able to interpret the tax laws we have in Ghana. Now, this is how the assessment is going to be made. So like I said, the syllabus is grouped into 3 core areas. So the major one, which carries the highest weight, is optimal tax outcome. How to advise and identify opportunities and tax implications for optimal outcomes of a course of action. Now, we expect that you should be able to calculate the tax liability of companies and maybe groups. And then after that, how do you communicate with your clients? Advisory. So 60, 30, 10, making 100. That does not mean that the marks allocated to A is 60 marks. No. What this weighting means is that we expect more studies or more work to be done under A. In other words, we give more weighting to the study objectives in that area. Let's look at the details and part A. This will be 60, not 30. So you are supposed to compute and advise on opportunities for optimal tax outcomes for complex situations in a legitimate and ethical manner. So what are the details that are required from us here? He says that compute and advise on opportunities for optimal outcomes for complex situations in legitimate income, including the following: the types of investments and expenditure that will result in a reduction of the tax liability for both individuals and businesses. And then tax planning, legitimate tax planning, like I said, legitimate tax planning measures, which is likely to be in the form of scenarios, and then you'll be required to advise on the course of action that can mitigate a particular tax exposure or a given tax exposure. You'll be asked to advise on the appropriateness of a course of action, for example, investment, and the mitigation of tax in a manner recommended. And you'll be doing some calculations, numerical analysis And then tax incentives here is also another important area. So we're looking at the free zones, the Ghana Investment Promotion Center Act, and then so many other business objectives. So that is what we are supposed to do under A. We are also supposed to understand current issues. This appears to be a bit new, because under the old syllabus, much attention was not given to international taxation. So we'll be looking at double taxation agreements, tax treaties, anti-avoidance rules, and transfer pricing is a big thing. Okay, then capitalization and income splitting. I know we did it in the under the previous syllabus, so we'll spend some time here. And then the application of the arm's length. Here we're still talking about transfer pricing, so we'll look at it in details. The tax implications of mergers, amalgamation, reorganization, as well as change in ownership. All these things we expect to do a lot of work in that area. Okay, permanent establishment is an interesting area. The meaning and implications of permanent establishment. Okay, including trading with and trading in Ghana concepts. Good. So A carries so much. So let's devote our time, look at the content, try to understand what is required from the syllabus. B is more or less some calculations and advice. So how to calculate tax liabilities of companies. And here, like I said, we'll be focusing more on the special industries, petroleum and then mining. We'll look at this. And then how to identify opportunities for optimal outcomes in a manner, exempts, reliefs, and all those things. We'll look at those in detail. Then the final one, which is just 10. Here it's more of how you advise your clients and how do you prepare appropriate responses in accordance with the law. So we expect that you demonstrate some technical knowledge to support and arrive at a conclusion. Okay, so memorandum, letters, briefing notes, and other things will be tested. So a typical question can ask you to write a memorandum or write a report. That's it. Okay, so looking at the content, how is the exams going to be like, the nature? And in your studies, I want you to start thinking that sooner you're going to pass and become a chartered accountant. Now, chartered accountants play a key role in businesses, and because of the strategic position they normally occupy. For example, a chief finance officer, if there's a project coming up, you are supposed to do all the evaluations and other technical calculations so that you advise a business. Because of your role, it is expected that you should be able to gain the requisite knowledge that will assist you in tax planning in your profession. So you will notice that a significant number of marks in the paper 3.3 will be demanding candidates to evaluate and advise based on a given scenario. Be expecting scenario. At this level, most of the things are scenario based. Give you a problem question and then expect you to advise. So this is my advice. Please assess critically what is required of you in the question. Okay, like I said, you may be asked to advise on the tax implications of a given course of action. So please understand that at this level you are an advisor, a technical advisor, and sometimes we'll be given 2 or more options, and then we ask you advice, which one is the best? Sometimes the examiner can specify the options for you, and sometimes too you'll be asked to identify the options from the scenario question given to you, and then you are supposed to advise. Remember, you need to think about all possible taxes that can have impact, or that can have impact on the scenario, or based on the fact that is given to you. So sometimes we can ask you to advise on a given scenario where you have to consider all the taxes, for example, VAT, customs, income tax, or sometimes the question will just restrict it to one tax type, for example, VAT. So please, you need to remember that. Now, if you look at the communication, the D part, let me go there. It says the C part, sorry. The C part has appropriate forms of communication. This is very, very key. Appropriate forms of communication. This one is very key. So my advice is that you will be required to prepare formal reports, letters, memorandum, or sometimes write a simple brief. And so you need to know which report or what form of communication is required. So you have to write your answer and present it in a format that is required. If you are required to write a report, write a report, not an essay. Okay. If you are required to prepare a memo, please remember the format of a memo. And don't forget that the format is very, very important. So keep to the requirements of the exams. Now, where the answer requires a formal presentation, the examiner will certainly award marks for presentation and effectiveness of the information, how structured your answer looks. And so you need to set out your point in a logical manner. Arrange your thoughts very well. Sometimes where it requires that you use headings for you to orderly arrange your answer, please do. And then look back to the question. If you are asked to draw conclusions or recommendations, please do that. At this level, it's not just knowing what the law says and just reproducing what is there. You need to link it to the requirements of the law. But please remember, when answering questions, identify the person you are preparing the report to. If the person you are preparing the report to is not a technical person, don't use technical and very technical terms. For example, somebody cannot understand the meaning of arm's length principle without you explaining to the person. So you have to also be careful. You may be also asked to identify tax implications of a given course of action. So here, that is where we want you to apply your knowledge of the law, okay, to the problem. Please do not write general technical terms, or don't just write the general thing just like that. Please relate it to the fact. You need to apply it to the fact. Okay, apply it to the fact, because marks will be awarded for satisfying the requirements of the question. So if you just go and reproduce what the law says without relating it to the question, you may lose a lot of marks, even if what you have produced is technically correct. Yes, that is what the law says, but you are just telling us what the law says and just reproducing what the law says. How does it solve the problem? Mostly the requirements of the questions will be carefully worded For example, calculate, briefly explain, analyze, advise. Okay, so for example, a brief explanation would usually require the main point. Unlike when we ask you to detail or explain in detail. So if you ask to explain in details, in that case, you have to consider the wider consideration of the issues. So you have to pay attention to the requirements of the law. Okay. And sometimes to look at the marks allocated, because it is very important. The higher the marks, the more is required of you. Though it doesn't mean that you should just be writing anything like that. Don't just reproduce, trying to fill the paper. It's a simple, on the point, clear answer is what is required, not too much. Remember, you are an advisor, so you don't write too many. If you are not required to provide explanation, please don't do that. For example, a question may ask you to calculate. If you are asked to calculate, I don't see the need for trying to explain what you want to do before you go ahead with the calculation. Just go ahead with the calculation. Always think before you start. Okay, and be methodological, be methodical in your answer. All right, sometimes you can also be asked to look at the tax implications of a future events. So look at the future consequences of your proposal. Don't look at the short term. Okay, because if you defer the taxes now, it can have a future event. So look at all those and consider those things. In some cases, and I always say it, in some cases you have to make assumptions, because if you make assumptions, it makes your advice better if those assumptions are not correct. Okay, and the person reading your advice gets to know what exactly the advice is about, because if you don't make assumptions, sometimes your advice may be completely unsuitable. And again, finally, maybe my final tip is that sometimes consider the non-tax factors if it is necessary. Okay, so I know you want to ask me, what are the study materials? At this point, there hasn't been any official book written on paper 3.3. Looking at the way the syllabus is structured, my first recommendation is the tax laws. Everything here. Look at the tax laws. The primary one is the Income Tax Act. Okay, the primary one is the Income Tax Act. Please, you should be familiar with the provisions. What does it say? So I've listed all the laws, the Income Tax Act and its regulation. This and this work together. And then the Revenue Administration Act is also important. The Value Added Tax and its regulations, they work together. Customs, because it is possible that you can be asked questions in customs. Excise duty is also possible. Now we'll be using this one for the Special Industries, Petroleum Exploration and Development Act, and then the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, and then the Minings and Minerals Act. This will be needed for a special industry. But here, aside that, I have some books. So this is the practice notes of the GRE. It's good. And then this book is Oil, Gas and Other Minerals Taxation by Dominic Knapp. It's available. International Tax Primer, mostly deals with the international aspect. So these three books covers the international taxation and transfer pricing. I recommend for you. They may be expensive, but you can get them to buy. Okay, so before I go into any full details of the syllabus, let us recap the principles of taxation from paper 2.6. I know you have read some tax principles already, and so I'm just going to rush you through taxation in Ghana. The first thing that I want you to remember is that taxation is a constitutional matter. Okay, there cannot be any tax if it is not authorized by Parliament. Okay, so Article 174 says that no taxation shall be imposed otherwise done by or under the authority of an act of Parliament. Okay, and those of you who have studied constitutional law a bit, you know Article 11 of the 1992 Constitution states the laws of Ghana. The laws of Ghana. The primary one is the Constitution itself, and then it says that Act of Parliament, and then rules and regulations made under the authority of Parliament. So Parliament can give authority to a body to pass a law. Mostly they come in the form of legislative instruments, the one we call subsidiary legislation. So it's either Parliament will pass a tax law, or it will be done through an LI, legislative instrument. Good. So that is Article 174, no taxation without Parliament's notice. Good. I will now go to Article 41, which talks about the duties of citizens. And like I said, taxation is more of a constitutional matter. It says that the exercise and enjoyment of rights and freedom is inseparable from the performance of duties and obligations, and accordingly it shall be the duty of every citizen to declare his income honestly to the appropriate lawful agencies and to satisfy all tax obligations. Okay, so a reading of Article 41 says that, or appears that, if you don't really honor your tax obligations, you have nothing called rights and freedom. See, because these two are inseparable. So it is your obligation, it's your duty to ensure that you pay your taxes. Those are the constitutional provisions. So I wanted to copy that. These things we've done them already in 2.6. But before, let us also recap again the tax systems in Ghana, and we're going to look at the history from 1943, when taxation was introduced, 1943, 1944 to 2015, and maybe to date. Okay, but we'll look at the major changes that occurred between this period. So we can trace the history of taxation in the then Gold Coast to 1943 in September, when the first September 1943, when the income tax ordinance was passed to Ghana. Since then, tax has undergone several changes. If you read the history very well, you'll notice that there was a major change in 1966. Then another major reform took place in 1975. 1975. Here is where we have the Supreme Military Council Decree, SMCD 5. Okay, SMCD 5, 1975. So SMCD 5 1975 remain in force until the year 2000. You notice that from 1975 to 2000, though there have been several amendments, this law had been very old. So in the year 2000, there was the Internal Revenue Act 2000 Act 592 to replace SMCD 5. Okay. Now between 2000 and 2015, you notice that that's almost about 15 years. Yeah, 15 years. This 592 had also been amended severally, to the extent that if you are holding the SMC the 592 and you are reading the content, if you are not careful, you'll be reading the section or provision of the law which has been amended. So there was a need for us to replace 592 with Act 896. So 896 is the one that is in use now, and that is the Income Tax Act. That is what we use now. So when Act 592 was passed, the regulation was also passed. Now let me explain a little bit here. Mostly you see an act and then you see its legislative instrument. So sometimes if you're reading the act, don't just read the act, go and look at the content of the legislative instrument, unless there's no LI to it. So you read the act and then you read the legislative instrument as well. So 592 work with LI 1675. So when 592 was replaced in 2015, the LI was also replaced in 2016 with LI 2244. Transfer pricing used to exist under Section 70 of 592. Okay, so Section 70 of 592, it was just a single provision that dealt with transfer pricing. But in 2012, a special regulation was passed, which was LI 2188, to work in hand with the 592. So when 592 was replaced again, this one still remained, but Section 70 is now found under Section 31 of the 896. I believe that if you get the act, you understand it more. Good. For those in the petroleum sector, the petroleum income tax, this law appears not to have been repealed yet. Okay, but then if you look at the current 896, we have lifted some sections of especially Section 63 to 76 and put it here in 896. It was more or less a reproduction of some of the sections in the PNDC law 188, and we put it under Section 63 of 896. Like I said, we'll be talking about the Minerals and Minings Act because you need to understand them. Double taxation agreements is part of the syllabus. We are going to look at them, currently about 14 of them. So I recommend that you get a tax treatise in Ghana. There's a book with summarized. We have summarized, not summarized, we have put together all the tax treatise in Ghana. So please get one. We will need them. Value added tax, since its introduction in Ghana in 1998, has also been replaced. It was replaced in 2013 with Act 870. So those of you who have been studying paper 2.6, I'm sure you have read 870 very well. And like I said, 870 has also 8 LI, just like this is supposed to be 546, not 5456. Good. So we'll be reading LI 2243 very well. Again, SEFs, customs, is also one of the areas which can be examined. So this has been repealed. It is now the Customs Act. which is being used now. Excise duty, we will look at it, and then stamp duty, we will also look at it. Good. So this is an overview of the laws that we'll be discussing and how the tax laws have transitioned up to date. But there was a major change in our tax administration in 2009. I want us to look at it. Those of you who remember very well, we used to have IRS, VAT, and SEPS. All of them were collecting revenue. Okay, and each of them had their own commissioners or something, and their bosses. They were more or less independent. But in 2009, a review around the world noticed that every tax authority or revenue collecting agencies were being referred as authority, and they were one. To improve the efficiency and the collection of taxes, all these three divisions were brought together when the Ghana Revenue Authority Act was passed in 2009. Please look at section 3 of the GRA Act, especially on the functions of the authority. Okay, we'll discuss it. This can be examined. Look at the functions. And again, like I said, this thing has you might have done it in the paper 2.6 already, so I'm not going to look at the functions in detail. Again, you will notice that under section 17, 3 divisions were created since 2009. So we have the Domestic Tax Revenue Division, the Customs Division, and the Support Division. And the law makes provision that any other division can be created if Parliament thinks so. For now, we have these 3 divisions. So this is how the division looks like. This is the number 1, number 2, number 3, or division 1, 2, and 3. So each of them has commissioners, but above them all is the Commissioner General. And this man is the one empowered to administer all taxes in Ghana. So most of the tax laws that you're going to read, you see Commissioner General. He has more or less delegated his powers to these commissioners, as you see. And there are some people he works directly with. Okay. So we'll come and look at the functions of the Commissioner General, the powers that he can delegate, and those ones that he cannot delegate in detail later on. Okay. But I want us to look at the classification of taxpayers as part of the reform. The GRA noticed that if they're able to segment taxpayers into large taxpayer, medium taxpayer, and small taxpayer, it will bring about some efficiency. So taxpayers were categorized according to their revenue that they make per year. So if you are a taxpayer and your revenue is more than 5 million cedis, then you'll be classified as a large taxpayer. Okay, and unfortunately, I think we have only one large taxpayer office in Accra. We're supposed to have had some in other regions. If your revenue is between 200,000 but below 5 million, you are a medium taxpayer. And then if your revenue is below 200,000, you are a small taxpayer. We'll look at this thing in details. But from section 3 of the GRA Act, we can summarize the functions of GRA into 3 or 4 main. The first one is that they identify taxpayers. Okay, and so the use of the tin. The second one is that they have to assess those taxpayers they have identified. Okay, they have to assess them to tax. After the assessment, they have to collect the taxes. Then after that, pay into the consolidated fund. Now, this one and this one doesn't concern you too much for your study. It is these two we want to study. How do we assess taxpayers, and what are the collection mechanism that we must put in place to collect. After you have calculated or you have assessed the taxpayer, how do you collect it? What dates do we give them to pay? Understand? So attention is going to be on this one. It doesn't mean that the last two, maybe the first one, you need to know about the rules about the tin registration and other things. Good. So like I said, I'm not going to talk much about the tin, just that read section 11 of the Revenue Administration Act 915. The person shall show the tin when he's making a declaration, notice, returns, and any other thing that relates to tax law. Okay, and in that same law, the following institutions are mandated to request your tin if you want to deal with them. GRA, you can't have anything to do. You cannot get anything from GRA if you don't produce your tin. Controlling Accountant General, Registrar General, the Registrar of Cooperatives, Land Title Registry if you want to register your land, Immigration, Passport, Drivers Authority. Let me cancel this because recently the Supreme Court has ruled that you don't need tin to come to court. So this part of section 11 has been repealed. The Supreme Court ruled against that. Ministries, departments, and agencies, all these ones, they must require. Now look at this one: banks, insurance companies, and other financial institutions. I'm not sure whether your bank has requested you to provide your tin, but banks are required to produce to use tin when they are dealing with their customers and any other person. Good. So the use of tin is also found here. You can find it in the Revenue Administration Act. Like we mentioned, you can't do anything without tin. Good. So these are some of the goals that the GRA put together. It's saying that they want to reduce administrative costs with respect to tax compliance. So I believe that the merger of IRS, VAT, and other customs is the right way. But look at here, number 6, improving information linkage. So if you read the new banking law, the Banks and Special Deposit Institution that was passed in 2016, the GRA is giving power to your information, and they can exchange your information with GRA. I mean, your bank can exchange your information with GRA. Good. We will take a short overview of the Income Tax Act, and I'm going to consider about 3 or 4 sections. Then we'll continue in the next video. You need to read the Income Tax Act and understand the provisions very well. So section 1 talks about imposition of tax, and like you know, tax, nobody really enjoy paying it, so it has to be imposed. Okay, something imposed on you means that you don't have a choice. It is imposed on you. So we call this the charging provision. This one is the one that lays the charge on you. Okay, so the charging provision. So it says that income tax is payable for each year of assessment. Now take notice of year of assessment, because we'll come and explain it. I told you that the GRA, they do assessments of tax liability, isn't it? Assessment. One of their functions is to assess you, and that is exactly what we're trying to study, how to assess tax payers for tax. After that, we collect the taxes. So the assessment of taxes is done in a year. So you can have 2016 year of assessment, 2017 year of assessment, 2018 year of assessment. So income tax is payable for each year of assessment by a person who has a chargeable income. Okay, person here is not only natural person. There are technically 4 persons that we are talking about here. 4 persons. We'll talk about individuals or natural persons, individuals. Okay, we talk about companies. Okay, we talk about partnership, and then we talk about trust or body of persons. Body of persons. Okay, body of persons. So a person, anybody, any of these. So if the person has a chargeable income for the year, and if you don't even have a chargeable income and you receive final withholding payment during the year, again, final withholding payment, we'll come and look at what a final withholding payment is. Final withholding payment, we can find what final withholding payment. You look at section 119, you will see the list of payment that are classified as final withholding payment and other things. We'll come and look at this thing in details, but pay attention to this one, the first one. Let's look at the A. It said if you have a chargeable income, then you must pay tax for a year of assessment. I'm going to suspend this one first, the following the other provisions, and then try to address this chargeable income thing, because if we understand it, it will help us a lot. Now, this is section 1. Chargeable income is defined in section 2. Let's look at section 2. Section 2 talks about chargeable income. Okay, we'll come back to the section 1 again, try to finish the other subsections. But let's look at section 2. Section 2 says the chargeable income of a person for a year of assessment. Again, it's mentioning the year of assessment here, which is very important. And we'll come and look at the year of assessment, the meaning, the year of assessment and basis period under section 18. Okay, so please take note. If you have time, just quickly put your hand under section 2, flip to section 18, and then look at the year of assessment, the meaning of year of assessment, and then basis period. Okay, basis period. Good. So section 2 says the chargeable income of a person for a year of assessment is the total of the assessable income. Now he has introduced another concept, assessable income. Assessable income of that person for the year from each employment. Now he's also listing something. Employment, business, and investment. Okay, this is what we call the sources of income. You will notice that in your reading, tax was not defined, okay, or income, because if you try to define what income is, it will be a bit complex. So we won't go into that one. So we try to identify the sources, and then we will look at them. So it says that each employment, business, or investment less, I've put this one in caps, less the total amount of deductions allowed. It means that it's likely that there are some deductions which are not allowed. So we'll look at it again. Okay, so if he says employment, we can find it under section 4. Business, we can find it under section 5. We'll come and look at what is the meaning of employment, what is the meaning of business, and then section 6 talks about investment. So we'll come and look at this one in detail under these sessions. Then it also says that less the total deductions. So what deductions is he talking about? Okay, again, we'll quickly look at section 8, which talks about the general principles on deductions. Section 9, residual deduction rule. And then we'll also need to read section 132 and 130 subsection 2 and then 130 subsection 4, so that we'll understand, we'll get a complete picture of what he means by deductions allowed. Okay, so we'll come and look at that one. Now you notice that he said assessable income. Here we also go to section 3. So let's go to section 3 and see. Now section 3 is a bit complicated because it will introduce other concepts But let's read. It said the assessable income of a person for a year of assessment is the income of that person from any employment, which we have already mentioned, business or investment. So it's just restating what is doing. The important subsection is subsection 2, and pay attention. It says the assessable income of a person for a year of assessment from any employment, business or investment is. He now introduced another important concept, A and B. Let's consider them individually. Let's look at the A part. It said in the case of a resident person. So you see, he has now introduced another resident person. The income of that person from each employment, business or investment for the year, whether or not the source from which the income is derived has ceased. Full stop. We will have to discuss the concept of resident person in detail because it is very critical when we want to do the assessment. B says in the case of non-resident person, so he has two persons here, two categories of persons, resident and then non-resident. Then in the case of non-resident person, the income of that person from the employment, business or investment for the year, to the extent to which the income has a source in this country. So for the non-resident person, said extent to which the income has a source. You need to underline the word source in this country. Country is talking about Ghana. That is I. That is one component. Then the B part, the second component says that where the person has a Ghanaian permanent establishment, another concept. P. Income from the year to which the permanent establishment that is connected with the permanent is irrespective of the source of the income. This is a bit complex. We have to consider a number of principles. So pause here and then we'll continue another in our next video. Thanks for watching and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And hey, give me feedback. Let's talk. What's up? Thank you.